Hi! Today we're reading from Upside Down Magic, Chapter 10. Upside Down Magic is written by Sarah Mlynowski, Lauren Myracle, and Emily Jenkins. Chapter 10 begins on page 88. In the cafeteria, Nori and Elliot both got plates of mac and cheese. At the salad bar, Elliot got only cucumbers. Nori got only cherry tomatoes. He was a single veggie guy, and she was a single veggie girl. Well, tomatoes were not really vegetables, as Father liked to point out, but close enough. Plus, they both had big hair. Nori smiled at that thought. Single veggies and big hair. Two things, at least, that they had in common, besides upside-down magic. Come sit with my Flair friends from ordinary school, Elliot offered. Nori nodded and followed him to a table where two girls and a boy sat already eating. The two girls had carrots and celery and broccoli next to their mac and cheese. The boy had a huge serving of mac and cheese and 0 vegetables. Hi, guys, Elliot said, sitting down on his tray. This is Nori. She just moved to town. He gestured at the others. Nori, this is Lacey, Xenia, and Rune. We call ourselves the Sparkies. The girl named Lacey looked familiar. Nori drew her eyebrows together and said, This is going to sound weird, but do I know you? No, you don't know me, Lacey replied coolly. But you've bothered me. Xenia tried to smother a giggle. She didn't try very hard. Nori took a spot at the table. She studied Lacey more closely. Sharp, short haircut, tiny feet and hands, enormous black glasses with lenses the size of large cookies. Oh, Nori exclaimed. We were in line together at the Sage Academy test. You didn't get in either. Lacey made a scornful sound, stabbed a piece of broccoli, and said, Please, of course, I got in. But I decided not to go, Lacey said. I wanted to stay in Dunwhiddle and do Flair stuff with my besties. Nori opened her mouth to reply, then thought better of it. She remembered Lacey's father coaching her on roasting marshmallows. She remembered Lacey's panic when her name was called, and her sobs as she fled the hall. Lacey chewed the piece of broccoli. She chewed it so aggressively that it seemed a small act of war. Then she swallowed and said, I heard about you, though. The headmaster's daughter, too wonky to get into her own father's school. Nori felt punched in the gut. She said, We don't say wonky. It's unkind. We say upside down. Ha! Xenia said. Love it, Rune said. Adorable. Elliot turned red and looked down at his plate. Hey, guys, remember that food fight in 4th grade with the hamburgers? Epic, said Rune. Well, for 4th graders, Xenia corrected. Things are different now, said Lacey. We're the Sparkies. I know, Elliot said. I came up with that name, duh, and it's the perfect name for us, Lacey said, and she pointed to Rune, Xenia, and herself. We are the Sparkies. You turned out to be an icy. She laughed, and her friends laughed with her. Elliot's smile dimmed. You need to go now, Lacey said. She took a bite of a baby carrot. You're embarrassing yourself, and you don't even know it. And when you embarrass yourself, you embarrass us, Xenia said pleasantly. Elliot turned to Rune, looking for some support. Well, Rune mumbled. Rune? Lacey said. Rune rubbed the back of his neck. We've been trying to ditch you all summer. Sorry, dude. We tried to tell you nicely, but you wouldn't listen, Xenia said. Lacey took a dainty sip of milk. That's why we had to melt your bike tires. Rune chuckled. Epic. Well, Elliot's head snapped back. That was you, he asked. Wow, yeah, epic is right. He tried to force a smile. That bike thing, I never would have guessed. So leave us alone already, said Lacey. Honestly, Elliot, you can be so dense. No wonder you got put in EUDM. A familiar tingle shivered up Nori's spine. Her vision blurred. No, no, no. Stay human. Do not flex in the lunchroom. But it was too late. Nori was out of her chair and on the floor. Her hands weren't hands anymore. They were covered in thick black fur with sharp claws. Oh, drat. She knew this animal. She had done it before. She was a skunk. Step away. Just leave them alone, thought Nori girl Nori. But Skunk Nori didn't step away. She was too angry at the Sparkies. How dare they be so mean to Elliot? They were enemies, hairless enemies, and she was a skunk. She could do stuff to enemies. Bad stuff, smelly stuff. No, girl Nori thought, but it was no use. Skunk Nori began to swell. She grew big to match the size of her hairless enemies. Then she grew bigger and bigger until a trunk popped out of her face, an elephant trunk. Nori waved menacingly in the air. She was Skunklefunt. Nori, body of a skunk, nose the size of an elephant, and she was mad. So mad. She lifted her giant skunk tail. Nori, stop! Elliot shouted. Skunklefunt Nori turned her haunches toward the hairless enemies. No, don't! Elliot cried. She aimed her Skunklefunt Nori bottom. Nori, do not spray the sparkies! Now one of the hairless things was tugging on her trunk. Skunklefunt Nori shook it off. It danced back in front of her and said, Nori, it's me, Elliot. Don't do this. Elliot. She remembered Elliot. He was nice. He had walked her to school. He was a single veggie guy. You can turn back, Elliot said. I know you can, before anything too disgusting happens. Okay, good idea, girl Nori thought. I can do this. I will just change back. I will not spray anybody. But then, what was that? Right in front of her was a tiny hairless thing in a baggy denim dress and 2 ponytails. It was the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. Ah! It was coming her way. Pepper, get out of here! Elliot shouted. You're fiercing! Danger! Danger! Here lies danger! Skunklefunt Nori reeled. Terror took over. Elliot tried one more time. Get away, Pepper! Stop, Nori! But it was too late. Skunklefunt Nori lifted her giant bushy tail and sprayed. And that's the end of chapter 10. We're going to have to see what happens in chapter 11.